listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today. We have another show lined up for y'all. We have another amazing episode. Hey, you think life is going fast? I mean, we are already July. What? It's crazy how fast time goes by. But man, we have an amazing show for y'all. We have a special guest, attorney Chad M. Layton of Mindful Divorce PA. You can go right to the website, it'll be in the show notes, but mindfuldivorcepa.com. He's going to help us understand what he's doing in his own community. Chad helps couples navigate separation with greater clarity, respect, and less conflict through mediation. He also has amazing guidance that I know our listeners will appreciate. So I want to cut right to the chase and say, first and foremost, Chad, thank you for being on the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you much for having me. I look forward to being on your show here today.
Yes, sir. So let's start out with what inspired you to focus your legal practice on divorce, mediation, and helping families separate more peacefully.
Sure. For me, I guess the story goes back a bit to law school, and just when I was in law school, connected well with one of our adjunct professors who really had their own practice in divorce and family law up in Orlando, Florida. Talked a lot about the business side of it, and I was interested in how you could make some money practicing law. And she seemed to be good at that. So ended up earning the book award in her class, and just for that year doing the best out of the other law students. So figured family law was an area that I would excel in. Went straight into that, came back to South Florida. I was born and raised down in Palm Beach County, Florida. So started practicing in family law. And just worked as an associate in divorce litigation, prenuptial agreements. And along the way, became a dad, became a husband, and started looking at the way divorce was affecting families a little different once I had a family, and really decided to start moving my practice over to something I felt better for families, being the collaborative divorce world as well as the prenuptial agreement planning.
When you think about the term mindful divorce, for our listeners, our viewers, kind of break that down, what that means and how it could be different from the divorce process most people might think, especially if they watch something on TV.
Sure, of course. For me, a lot of times, even as a young attorney, divorce basically meant litigation. That, if it was a family that had the means to obtain professional help, unfortunately, that was hiring a lawyer and going to court and fighting. And the truth is being that lawyer for many families, they didn't really need court, and court was something that just caused further destruction. So the mindful divorce came from me just really working a lot in that mindfulness area and looking for a different way to do what I was doing. So it really, stems from the idea that you can go through the divorce process in a much better way, right? And that even if you're a family, and many of the families we work with are high net worth families, but that doesn't mean they want to go to court and battle. So maybe stopping and thinking, making a plan and seeing, are there some good professionals that can help us get the divorce done without just throwing it into court and making it worse.
And to that point, families who don't want to end up that way, but unfortunately do sometimes, kind of explain, based on what you've seen in your own experience, why some divorces can become highly combative, and even if the people initially intended to be respectful in the beginning.
Sure. Yeah. My experience is that's, the idea that there's conflict is the norm, right? Even when we're working with folks that they're getting divorced for a reason. And so there's conflict. And sometimes I see it a lot of different ways. Right now, I have a couple cases where, no surprise to you or to your listeners, that money is an area where even in the divorce process, they start to kind of struggle of who's going to have control over certain accounts, who's going to have control over how we're managing the cost of regular expenses, such as just mortgages, vehicles, and then even professionals. Generally we're working with an accountant. So that's an area that is no surprise to anybody, that money can cause a problem. And then it's just a matter of how you deal with that conflict, right? It's going to be there. Do you deal with it by going to court and throwing it in the judge's lap? And I am the first to tell folks I've done it 18 plus years. That's not a good resolution method. The judges are not generally your friend. And so you have to try to find another way to deal with that conflict. But yeah, money is one. I mean, what a lot of people see of, hey, a spouse decided to go outside the marriage, right? A new boyfriend, new girlfriend, paramour. That's pretty common. But in my experience, that's more of an effect after the marriage already broke down. It's not common where somebody comes in and just says, I caught them cheating, so I'm getting divorced. It's more that resulted after the marriage was really over anyhow.
When you look at how emotions can be a big role in this process, what are some of the most costly emotional mistakes that you see people make in the beginning of the divorce?
Yeah, I think that's an area where, a lot of your listeners and people and your community can do a little better job of. Divorce is emotional. I don't know how it couldn't be. It just is for any of us that have been married. That, divorce is something that if you're going through the divorce process, there's a lot of reasons there. And so you're going to be emotional. If they can, just pause before you take big actions. Pause being, hey, interview a couple professionals. Don't just go by what I see a lot of friends and armchair quarterbacks of somebody that went through divorce. Suddenly they're an expert and they're going to tell you what you need to do. I kind of consider it as to, me going to a doctor if I had a surgery. Don't rely upon me to tell you how to get your surgery done just because I went and had a doctor do it. So don't rely upon people that have been through divorce before. I've seen a lot of smart people listen to other colleagues of theirs about divorce and they're just led astray. Go find some good counsel that hopefully can try to come up with a plan to settle it for you outside of court.
We're just now tuning in. You're listening to I Am Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, attorney Chad M. Layton of Mindful Divorce PA. Go to the website, mindfuldivorcepa.com. My next question for you is, how can someone determine whether mediation is the right option for their situation?
Sure. Mediation is one of those buzzwords you hear a lot of people talk about in divorce. For me, it's similar to a lot of things that mediation alone isn't necessarily the best tool for you. It's a test that it's going to test everything that's been done prior to mediation. That mediation itself is really just a conference with you and your spouse, a mediator, which is a third-party neutral. I'm certified as a mediator down here in Florida as well as an attorney, and a lot of family law attorneys mediate as well. My concern with mediation is many people that just, they're not attorneys, they're not in the legal world, they'll think mediation is going to be a solution for me. My experience is it's not. You've got to do a lot of work first, and it can be. But don't just assume that going to mediation is something for me and for families that, again, more of the families than not that are going to contact lawyers, mediators, and professionals. They've done a little bit. They've earned some assets over the years. Let's say they have $1 million or so in assets. They need some real help, and generally it's going to be legal counsel. And then I think if you can get the legal counsel, then you start doing the work to prepare for mediation. And then you have a good chance of success at mediation. So I'm a big fan of mediation. I'm just not a big fan of people rushing into it and not doing all of the work. I hear, potential clients all the time, and it seems to me they're trying to shortcut the process. If there was an easy way, we would have done it the easy way. There isn't an easy way. But mediation is a very good tool. You just can't use it by itself and think that it's going to help you too much if you're a family with children and somewhat established.
When you help clients deal with emotions, kind of going back there a little bit more, when you think about making better, clear decisions, how do you help them when they're going through the emotion of feeling betrayed and
Sure.
Maybe feeling some fear?
Absolutely. That's something that for most divorce attorneys, including myself, is a big area of frustration. One of the solutions that I really appreciate about the collaborative divorce process, which it's really a very structured process that attorneys can become trained in and accredited in and really do the work to become experts in that field. You learn in your training in collaborative divorce that you build a team, and attorneys like myself who have no business giving people that type of advice are really happy to see in collaborative divorce, you bring on a mental health professional or a facilitator that comes on and they become part of the team where we then build out. Generally, it's going to be myself. I'm going to represent either spouse. Then we're going to bring on another collaboratively trained attorney, represent the other spouse. So let's say I represent the wife, right? We're going to find somebody that's really good. And a lot of times my client will trust me to go out and find that other individual, find another collaborative attorney to represent the husband. In that case, if I represent the wife, then the two attorneys are going to meet and we're going to talk about a mental health professional, a facilitator, somebody that really can bring that volume down, bring some of that anxiety level down and help them to communicate, because the attorneys just aren't trained to do that. They try to do it all the time and they don't know what they're doing, including myself. So where possible, you want to have that facilitator, that collaboratively trained facilitator. That's what they're there for. They're experts. And then the last member of the team we generally bring in is going to be a neutral financial accountant. And everybody's always worried about money you need to divorce, especially for the higher net worth families. There's a lot of assets, liabilities, trusts, real estate, everything else in the world we need to figure out. Accountants can help with that, right? They can gather all the documents, explain it to spouses that may not fully understand business interests, and then you really have a good full team to help you settle the case.
And with all of this going on, there are parents out there who have kids. So with your experience, what have you seen, or what has your team helped suggest to parents to protect their children from being emotionally trapped during this whole process?
Yeah, I'm a parent myself, so that one is huge for me, and that's one of those that unfortunately it happens all the time, where when you get in divorce, things can already be a bit bad, and they can get worse for the children, and that's what we want to protect and guard against, but we don't live in a perfect world. So what can you do? I guess some of my suggestions would be is, if possible, you want to have that mental health professional as soon as possible. So if you're a parent out there just looking for a local therapist that works with children going through divorce, they're common. That's something that therapists are good at. And so if you can, try to get on the same page and retain a therapist that can speak with your children. They may speak with mom and dad as well, but it's a life-changing event for any child going through divorce. So if you can get a therapist on board as soon as possible, that I would certainly recommend, because they're going to be experts in that area, and they're likely going to give both the parents, a few guidelines and some areas that can help them do their best to protect the children. If parents are willing to do that, they're likely already on the course for success, because they're willing to do so. Sometimes parents aren't, but that's my best advice, is if you can, bring in a therapist before you talk to the lawyers, right? Just bring in a therapist as soon as you can, just to start talking to your children about what divorce is.
What are some early conversations couples should have about finances, property, custody, and future responsibilities?
A big one that I see as a problem for people is just early on of how are we going to pay the bills, for the next 3 to 4 months. That, okay, if we come to the decision, we're going to get a divorce done, we've traditionally paid the bills this way, that's fine. Are we going to continue to do that? Which that's okay if they can agree on that. If we're not going to continue to do that, what's going to be our new process? Are we going to start separating our own bank accounts? Are we going to start, and you get into really hairy issues there. But on the financial side, that would be my initial thought of, if you can, and not everybody is. Sometimes it's better not to even have that discussion with your spouse, because it's just going to turn into a fight. You're not going to get solutions done. If so, that's where lawyers can help, right? They can tell you there's law that helps you do what we call preserve the status quo, and all types of legal issues we can get in and do our best to guide them and help them. But if they're on good speaking terms and they can't communicate, I would encourage them early on to say, hey, how are we going to pay our regular, just monthly mortgage, our car payments, our student tuition? If we have children, we're paying for tuition for them. Other just expenses, are coming along the way. How are we going to pay for it? If that's going well, even talk about how you're going to pay for some of these professionals, right? If we know we need some help and we can afford it, how are we going to pay for these lawyers, accountants, mental health professionals?
When you think about communication, how it plays, and when things are being finalized during the divorce, based on your experience, what does that typically kind of look like when things are wrapping up and it's like, okay, we need to communicate and create agreements while we are putting this wrapped up in the bow?
Yeah, it's one of those that it certainly comes up in what we do and what we focus in the collaborative process, and many times what we'll talk to clients about once they get into it. So once they're past that initial stage of how are we going to handle this, who are we going to hire, how are we going to get this divorce started, once they get into the meat of it and the thick of it, then more often than not, the professionals are going to really help them talk about negotiating what we call kind of within the process and within the team, because we don't want to leave them to their own devices. My experience is a lot of times couples, and for most of us in life, when you start talking about and starting negotiating, neither of you really know the benchmark and neither of you know what the law is or what you're entitled to. It can get worse rather than better. So once you get into the thick of it, most cases we're going to advise couples, don't communicate about big issues in your divorce. Wait till we get to, and for us, we set up a series of settlement meetings where we have an agenda beforehand and we say, hey, today we're going to talk about how we're dividing up specific assets, specific liabilities. Everybody's getting an agenda beforehand. You're going to have your counsel with you. We're going to have an accountant there. We're really going to try to dig into how we can come up with some fair resolutions for you. Next time it might be talking about alimony or child support or parenting plan. So where possible, we generally encourage couples not to negotiate that on their own, because it just does more harm than good.
You're listening to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, attorney Chad M. Layton of Mindful Divorce PA. Go to the website, mindfuldivorcepa.com. My next question for you is, let's be real. Sometimes life happens and, we find ourselves in a need of someone in your profession.
Sure.
When you are looking at past clients or maybe current clients, what should someone look for when they're choosing for a divorce attorney and mediator?
Yeah, I mean, I expect most individuals and professionals they'll answer that a little bit different. For us, our practice is really geared towards helping people to stay out of court. If you ever look us up, that's kind of our message to everyone. So, and that's not most divorce attorneys, right? So we're a bit different, but there are many others out there. Specifically, collaboratively trained divorce attorneys would be my suggestion, that if you can, use some of those buzzwords for someone that's collaboratively trained, really does a lot of work in that area. If you're the type of client we want to work with and that we're a good fit, we're not a good fit for everyone. Sometimes people really are. I want my day in court. I really need to get some revenge on my spouse. I wish you luck, right? I've been there, done that. I'm not real interested in it. So for us, I would advise clients that are of that mindset, if you really do want to try to get through the divorce process, make sure you're protected and you get everything you're entitled to, but you also don't fight in court for the sake of fighting and you don't make it nastier than it needs to be. That would be my thought is, look for some people and professionals. And, I've come to the mindset over the years that you likely need a team, that it really is. If you can do it the right way, you're going to need an attorney for each spouse. You're going to need an accountant. You may or may not need a mental health professional. Not everyone does, but I think most families, if they're a little bit more established and they have just an estate that is a little bit complicated, right, that has several different either business interests or real estate assets or whatever it may be, hey, you're generally going to need that. So that's my thought. And you and I discussed it a little earlier of something like mediation or whatever it may be. Don't think there's ever an easy way out. It's going to be some hard work, but more times than not, I guess it's likely worth it for you.
If someone's watching this and they're thinking, okay, what could be my first steps if I ever find myself in a situation where I believe my marriage is on the way to coming to an end?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big proponent. I share with you, I'm a husband and a dad, right? So if it's available, most of the time people have already tried it, but if you haven't, go to a marriage counselor, right? Go see if your spouse is interested in a marriage counselor and see if you can save the marriage. That's number one. And then number two, some of these marriage counselors may even have a relationship with collaboratively trained divorce attorneys or attorneys that they know to be ethical, right? If you do need to go through the divorce process, you want to do your best to find somebody that's more ethical and not looking to, I certainly deal with attorneys still to this day that they are looking to make things worse, right? There are bad attorneys out there. There are attorneys that can make it worse for you. You want to steer clear of that. So you have to try to use your best judgment and see if you can find somebody. And you interview them before you hire anybody. Make sure you interview them and sit down and see if they're a good fit for you.
And not to throw a curveball, but just pop in my head. When you look back at the clients you serve, are there any, not common thread, but is there ever like a breaking point where it's like, okay, this seems to be something that happens when it triggers them. Okay, last straw. I can't do this no more. I need a divorce. Is there anything that sticks out as a pattern or not really?
Yeah, I would say so. And that's a common question. I have, a lot of folks say, hey, Chad, it's what you do for a living. What is it for you in your small practice? What do you see as maybe the most common reason that people are going through the divorce? For me, more times than not, I would say it's generally one spouse or the other really using money to control the other spouse. It's common. I think most of us see it regularly. But for me, hey, I've done this for 18 plus years. And that over that time frame, I would say that's probably pretty easily the most common reason that I see folks at the end of the day. One spouse or the other has control over the finances to an extent. And they look to use that as just a way to really control the other spouse and say, that you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's going to upset most of us in the world.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, attorney Chad M. Layton of Mindful Divorce PA. Go to the website, mindfuldivorcepa.com. For our viewers and our listeners, if they feel like they are overwhelmed and afraid of what divorce may do to their family, what's a message of clarity or encouragement that you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, hey, taking my attorney hat off and just being a husband myself, of it's hard. That's number one for me and for most of us, that marriage is hard. So you have to do your best to try to make it work. If you can, and if your spouse is amenable to it, try to reach out to a marriage counselor and see if there's any way to try to make it work. So that's, I guess, my first thought. And then second, I would say is that, divorce is something that can be handled many different ways. So if you do have to go through a divorce, just take your time and think about it as a life-changing event versus I've seen many people, successful, smart people, just find the first attorney they can to get them filed in court, and they feel like they made progress there and they feel better. That is just a bad decision. Don't do that. Slow down, stop, think about what you're going to do and make a plan. It's not a small step. So think about it, do some research. And if you do have to go through the divorce process, meet with a couple people, do a little research on it and decide what's going to be best for, number one, on your end. What are your goals? Slow down and think about what you really want out of it. And rushing to court is just a mistake many times.
Part of what your team does is help families move forward without allowing the divorce process to destroy their future relationships. So talking on the subject of future relationships, have you seen growth and progress, if you're allowed to, with people who moved on and have found better relationships, or is that kind of like on their end, and once they're done with you, they're kind of done?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that we have, and it helped a lot. I have seen some of that, specifically when we really transitioned our practice to really focus on private divorce settlement, right, and keeping people out of court. That's just still, very different and not what most people expect from a divorce lawyer. So once we transitioned to that about 6 years ago, we started seeing a different type of clientele, and it just brings the temperature down by nature. And so when we're meeting with folks, many times now I'm having couples come in together to have an initial consultation with me, which is just completely changed, where they're coming at it a little bit more as a team and saying, hey, this is something we can do. And so you go all the way through the process. And then at the end, many times you'll see them, riding together in the same car to come to our office to sign off on some settlement agreements. So I think we do see a lot of times healing and people with the ability to move forward and say, hey, there's a way to move forward. They can help me plan how to move forward. And we talk about preserving those relationships. A lot of times you're going to be grandparents. You're going to go to weddings down the road. You're going to go to high school graduations. You're not ending this relationship. Sometimes we talk about it as restructuring the relationship because you're not really ending it. So yeah, we've been lucky enough to see a number of couples over the years kind of leave us not necessarily happy. I'm not one of those that feel that a lot of people are happy about divorce. That's not something you want, but sometimes it happens. It needs to happen. And I think we can help them move on in their lives. And if we do that, it's probably a success.
And to come full circle for those who are watching and viewing us and they happen to be in your local community and they head over to mindfuldivorcepa.com, what can they expect if they ever reach out to you and your team? What's the process look like?
Yeah, for us, it's, very much of just kind of reaching out and starting off with our team would just be Janice or Maria up front, would be happy to speak with them. Generally, they're going to have just a short phone conversation. They're going to schedule some time to speak with them, let them know a little bit about our office, and then listen, hear a bit about their family and what their goals are in divorce and some of the important facts and goals and issues to see if we're a good fit. So that's really the first step, is just, when you say checking us out, speaking with the staff up front, checking to see if we are a good fit, and then they're happy to do that. And if so, then the next step is they would schedule time for those individuals and myself to meet, either via Zoom or in person. And really then you start talking about what a team would look like, because that's what you need. It's never going to be just us. It's a matter of, can we be the quarterback? Can we come on and help to start building that team for you? That's where we start.
Once again, listen, I'll Refocused Radio. You're watching us online, talking to our guest today, attorney Chad M. Layton of Mindful Divorce PA. Go to the website, mindfuldivorcepa.com. Can't believe time has flown out the window, but if you have one more message that you want to leave with our viewers and audience, what would that be?
Just that I wish all of you the best in a happy marriage, and we're more than happy to find some other work. If people, I'd love for people to stay together, and that divorce is not something that we think highly of. It's just something that happens, and so I guess I would mention, hey, we also enjoy doing prenuptial agreement planning, and so if possible, maybe that's a little bit lighter note I'll leave you with. And if anybody needs prenuptial agreement planning, we're happy to help you with that as well.
And cliffhanger, since we are flat out of time, they want to know how to do all that. They can go right to your website, mindfuldivorcepa.com. Again, that's mindfuldivorcepa.com. Like I always want to say to you, thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's great to meet you, and I appreciate you having me on.